Over 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Plato wrote of a mighty island, rich in gold, teeming with life, and more advanced than any civilization of its time. But in a single night, the sea rose, the earth shook, and the city was swallowed by the waves. Was Atlantis a real place lost beneath the ocean, or a timeless warning wrapped in myth? Tonight, we dive into the depths of history and mystery to uncover the truth behind the legend of the lost city of Atlantis. More than 2,000 years ago, in the heart of ancient Greece, a philosopher named Plato wrote a story that would echo through millennia. It was not just any story. It spoke of a magnificent land, a place of wonder and power, that flourished thousands of years before his time. This was Atlantis, a city of splendor, mystery, and sudden doom. Plato first introduced the tale of Atlantis in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC. In these writings, he described a civilization that existed about 9,000 years before his own era, which would place it around 9600 BC. According to his account, Atlantis was a vast island empire located beyond the Pillars of Heracles, a term used in ancient Greece to refer to the Strait of Gibraltar. Beyond that narrow gateway lay the Atlantic Ocean, and somewhere across its waters, Plato claimed, once thrived a powerful and prosperous kingdom. Plato's narrative tells us that Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, a land blessed with fertile plains, abundant resources, and a climate so mild that agriculture flourished year-round. The Atlanteans, he said, were descendants of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and a mortal woman named Cleito. Poseidon, enchanted by her, built a grand palace on a hill and surrounded it with rings of water and land, a unique, circular design that would become the hallmark of Atlantis. Over generations, this city expanded into a mighty empire. The wealth of Atlantis was legendary. According to Plato, its harbors were full of ships, its markets overflowing with goods from across the world. Gold and silver adorned their temples. Orichalcum, a mysterious reddish metal, covered their walls and statues. Their architecture was advanced, their buildings massive and elegant, their roads well-planned and connected. They had a powerful navy, disciplined armies, and a network of trade that stretched across continents. They cultivated their lands with advanced irrigation systems, harnessed natural resources, and built magnificent bridges and canals that connected the circular rings of their capital city. This image of a lost golden age captivated the imagination of those who heard it. But Plato did not write this as a simple myth. He presented it as history, a lesson told to the statesman Solon by Egyptian priests centuries earlier. According to his account, Solon visited the city of Sais in Egypt, where priests revealed ancient scrolls describing a great civilization that had existed thousands of years before, only to be destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune. Plato's dialogues explain that the Atlanteans, once noble and virtuous, became greedy and ambitious. They sought to conquer lands far beyond their borders, even threatening Greece itself. But the gods, displeased by their arrogance, decided to punish them. A sudden catastrophe struck. Earthquakes shook the earth, floods swept the land, and the mighty island of Atlantis sank beneath the sea, disappearing forever. For Plato's contemporaries, the story was intriguing, even shocking. Some believed he was presenting an allegory, a symbolic tale to warn Athens against hubris and imperial overreach. After all, Plato often used stories to illustrate philosophical points. In his time, Athens had recently seen the rise and fall of its own power during the Peloponnesian War, and the lesson of a once great civilization destroyed by its own pride would not have been lost on them. Yet there were others who wondered, what if it was true? Could there really have been an advanced civilization so far back in time, long before the known history of Egypt, Sumer, or the Indus Valley? Ancient Greece itself was a cradle of reason and inquiry, and even myths were sometimes believed to hold fragments of forgotten truths. Early interpretations of Atlantis varied. Some ancient writers dismissed it as pure fiction, a parable invented to serve Plato's philosophical arguments about ideal states and moral decay. Others speculated that it might correspond to real events, perhaps a memory of ancient floods, or the destruction of an island by volcanic activity, like that of Thera, modern Santorini, which erupted around 1600 BC and devastated the Minoan civilization. Plato's account remained the primary source for centuries. No other contemporary Greek historian wrote about Atlantis, and no Egyptian records have been found to confirm Solon's supposed source. Still, the vividness of Plato's description kept the tale alive. He provided specific details: the size of the island, the layout of the city, the names of rulers, and even the measures of their canals and walls. According to him, the central island had 3 concentric rings of land and 2 rings of water, connected by tunnels wide enough for ships to pass. Bridges crossed the rings, and a grand temple to Poseidon stood at the heart of the city, its walls lined with orichalcum and its roof gleaming with gold. Plato also spoke of the fertile plains that stretched beyond the city, capable of feeding a vast population. There were mountains rich in forests, animals both wild and tame, and an abundance of elephants, a detail that fascinated many later researchers. The Atlanteans mined their land, traded their wealth, and built an empire that extended across islands and coastal regions of the Atlantic. But the tale ends in tragedy. As their power grew, their virtue declined. Pride replaced wisdom, and domination replaced cooperation. When they turned their eyes toward Greece, the Athenians stood against them. According to Plato, in those distant times, Athens itself was a far older city, possessing great warriors and just rulers. The Athenians defeated the Atlantean invaders, but soon after, the catastrophe struck, and both civilizations were undone. The Athenians by war and upheaval, the Atlanteans by the sea itself. This was the story as Plato told it: a grand empire, a moment of hubris, and a sudden, catastrophic end. Whether he intended it as a true history or a moral allegory remains one of the great debates of antiquity. Over the centuries, philosophers, historians, and explorers revisited the story. During the Middle Ages, it faded from the forefront of European thought, preserved only in the texts of Plato. But with the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration, curiosity was rekindled. Maps were drawn of the Atlantic with speculative islands, sailors whispered of lands beyond the horizon, and thinkers wondered if Plato's island beyond the Pillars of Heracles could be the Americas, the Azores, or somewhere beneath the mysterious waves. For now, in this first chapter, what matters is the legend's birth. A story penned by a philosopher more than 2,000 years ago, claiming to remember an event nearly 12,000 years in the past. Whether truth or allegory, history or fable, Atlantis entered the human imagination as a lost world, a reminder of how fragile greatness can be, and how easily even the mightiest cities can vanish when nature and destiny align. For centuries, the story of Atlantis remained a tale passed down from ancient writings. It was first told in the works of an old philosopher who lived in Greece. He claimed that the story came from even older sources in Egypt. According to those accounts, a great island civilization once existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the straits now known as Gibraltar. It was said to have been powerful, wealthy, and advanced, but in a single terrible night, the sea swallowed it whole. After this tale spread, generations of thinkers, sailors, and scholars began to wonder whether the lost city had truly existed or whether it was only an allegory. In the early days, most treated it as a moral story about pride and the downfall of empires. Yet, with each passing century, people searched for clues in maps, in ruins, and beneath the waves. The age of exploration gave the myth new life. As explorers crossed oceans and discovered unknown lands, whispers arose that some of these distant islands might be fragments of the lost land. When new continents were found far to the west, many believed that they were once connected to the ancient island. Old maps were redrawn with mysterious marks, and sailors' tales began to include visions of sunken cities and strange stone structures beneath the sea. In later centuries, as science advanced, the search became more serious. Scholars began to analyze ancient texts in detail, looking for hidden clues. They calculated distances, studied ocean currents, and examined the seafloor with growing curiosity. Some looked to the Mediterranean itself, thinking the story had been misunderstood and that the ruins might lie closer to home. Others pointed to the far Atlantic, arguing that vast ocean floors and hidden ridges could once have held a mighty kingdom. Several places gained special attention. There were claims of structures in the waters near the Azores, islands far out in the Atlantic. Explorers described strange rock formations, some of which seemed like walls or roads, though later studies suggested they were natural. Another theory placed the lost land near the island of Santorini, where a great volcanic eruption had destroyed an ancient civilization thousands of years ago. The destruction of that island and its city had eerie similarities to the old story: sudden disaster, fire, ash, and the sea rushing in. Still, the original account spoke of a place beyond the known seas of that time, far richer and grander than most Mediterranean cultures. This left many convinced that the real answer must lie somewhere deeper, perhaps in regions still unexplored. The search took new forms in the 20th century. With the rise of diving technology and sonar mapping, researchers began to scan the ocean floor. Reports emerged of unusual shapes: lines that looked like roads, rectangles that resembled city foundations. Some explorers claimed to have found whole streets beneath the Caribbean waters, off the coasts of Cuba and the Bahamas. One place in particular, near the island of Bimini, stirred excitement when divers found a series of flat stones arranged like a pathway. Some believed it to be a road of the lost civilization, while others said it was only a natural formation of limestone. Meanwhile, other theories grew far more imaginative. Some suggested the island was not in the Atlantic at all, but in the far-off seas of the Pacific or Indian Ocean. A few even connected it with lands like Antarctica, claiming that shifting ice and changing poles had buried it. These ideas found supporters but also strong critics, as no firm evidence supported such claims. What made the mystery endure was not only the possibility of ruins, but the description of its people. The old story described a civilization of great engineers, sailors, and builders, with temples covered in precious metals, canals cutting through cities, and knowledge that seemed far ahead of its time. This picture fascinated generations. It was a vision of a world that could have stood between the age of myth and the dawn of recorded history. Scientific communities often warned against too much imagination. They pointed out that ancient texts were full of exaggerations and symbolic stories. Some believed that the lost city was never meant to be taken literally. According to this view, the story was a teaching tool, a way to warn societies about greed, ambition, and the fall that follows when men believe they are greater than the gods or greater than nature. Yet even among serious researchers, the idea never fully disappeared. Ocean expeditions continued, books were written, and films showed glowing images of sunken cities. The mystery drew both scientists and dreamers, each hoping to be the one to find proof that an advanced people had once lived and vanished, leaving only fragments of memory. Today the search continues in many forms. Satellites scan the seabed, submarines travel where men cannot swim, and computers build maps of the deep oceans more detailed than ever before. Some believe that if the city truly existed, its remains lie buried under miles of water and silt, hidden in the dark zones of the ocean floor. Others think that the real story lies in how humanity remembers its past, a mixture of truth, half-truth, and legend. The tale has outlived empires and centuries because it speaks to something larger than ruins. It reflects the hope that somewhere, hidden under waves or locked in ice, lies proof that our world has lived many lives before this one. And until the ocean gives up its secrets, the city will remain both lost and found, alive in imagination, waiting in silence below the sea.